the British farmers in a rush to the bottom to compete with the Americans.
Well, that, to be fair, John, that was the best case scenario. It's probably implausible.
But they can't do it because it would shut out the European market to them. Professor Mintford was right. It would actually kill British farming.
And yet, as Paul, you heard Paul there, when people were telling him that it was going to kill British farming, he thought, with absolute reasonable justification, he thought it was all part of, quotes, Project Fear, end quote.
Yeah, I mean, the NFU actually advised farmers on this and advised them to vote Remain.
And yet out they piled. Every flipping field I drove past in Norfolk had a vote leave sign in it, which must have been put up by the farmers.
That was mainly as a protest against late CAP payments, but it's only come out since the late payment.
Forgive me, but you sound like you
one of the few things she's actually right on.
Yeah.
You see, there are things, I mean, even, what was his, Duncan Smith made the stupid remark that, well, if Welsh hill farmers can't keep sheep because they won't be able to export them to Europe with the tariff, they'll have to grow crops. How do you grow crops halfway up a mountain?
Well, you just need to believe more, John. Haven't you been paying attention?
Well, yes, I've come to the conclusion. I mean, there's a good chicken analogy because the whole country's being run by a bunch of headless chickens at the moment. I think they've got no idea what they're doing. I don't think they ever have had. But it would be serious, not just for farming. It would shut down the European market for all British food products, because we would have to prove that American chlorinated chicken or even GM crops hadn't got into our food products.
So that, but I mean, I think
that's possible.
No, because the promise of frictionless trade and having frictionless trade with the European Union and having new deals with countries that didn't abide by European Union legislation, it's almost as if that was always hogwash, John, but only some of us perhaps realised it, and eventually everybody will, and then the effort will be put into pretending that they knew all along that this was going to happen, and that's the bit that I'm not looking forward to, because how do you persuade yourself that you voted for lower food standards?
Yeah, well, it's just got worse and worse.
It hasn't even started yet. We haven't even left.
I think it was Ian Duncan Smith again. I've seen a recent quote of it that says, well, we need to now bring in experts. Well, I thought Joe said we don't need any experts, we're fed up with them, but you couldn't really make it up.
You're like me, you clearly have accepted defeat and are now straining to keep an even keel and even perhaps sometimes to see the funny side, like Paul helped us do a moment ago. But as someone with 30 years working within the NFU, if there is a reduction in our food safety standards, then that is curtains for most big-scale agriculture in this country.
You're right, it is. The ones that will go first will be the small. I mean, most farms in this country are still small family businesses.
Yes.
And there was another politician, I can't remember who it was now, who said, well, the farmers could sell their land. Well, 50% of them are tenants for a start.
Yes.
And what can you do? Who's going to buy a Welsh hill farm?
No, I mean, that could be...
I'm saying you can sell it, but you've got to have a buyer. And there's no, apart from keeping livestock, there's nothing else you can do with it.
Turning it all into a national park, but then who's going to pay for it? That I'm told, and this is more your field of expertise than mine, but I'm told that the Welsh sheep farmer will be the one who gets hit immediately the day after we leave, because
we say Welsh, I mean any hill farmer, like
they
all get hit straight away because they've got no other products apart from diversifying the bed and breakfast
and yes, and that's to be encouraged. But to be clear, the reason is because right now selling into Bruges or Brussels or Berlin is no more difficult than selling into Birmingham or Burton-upon-Trent, whereas the morning after we leave.
Correct. And on live sheep meat, the EU external tariff is 40%. Well, I don't know who's making the money, but the farmers get, I think it's about 40 quid a land, so they're not making a fortune.
No, I know. I mean, it's an industry already on its uppers, and yet, eventually everyone's going to be like Paul. Well, no, that's not true. Half will be like Paul and admit that they made a mistake, and half will continue lying and pretend that they voted Remain after all. Just a question of when, not if. Thank you, John. So for the record, I hope I'm wrong. Just haven't been yet.
Coming up at 1 on LBC, Sheila Fogarty.
Italy has 2 major cities in lockdown because of coronavirus. With the virus worsening and travelling, are you taking any protective measures?
Sheila Fogarty on LBC.
Have you ever lost money on a stocks and shares ISA or an investment bond sold by a bank like Lloyds or Halifax? The first thing Goodwin Barrett told me was I could make a claim myself and even take it to the Financial Ombudsman for free if unsuccessful. I looked into it, but I'd much rather spend my time doing something else. Goodwin Barrett ran my claim on my behalf instead. No stress, all the way from investigation to the final payout. Get the compensation you could be owed. Text GOOD to 78900.
Choose Swell Heating and you get a lot more than an efficient boiler from top manufacturers like Worcester Bosch. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Hi, I'm Alex Rees and I'm here to tell you about my new podcast, Time to Talk. We talk about everything to do with mental health with a variety of special guests. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Let's hear it for Max. He put the spring into Springer Spaniel until he sprained his leg after one heroic river leap too many. Luckily, his family didn't have to splash out because Pets in a Pickle had Max covered. And now he's sprung back into action. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, get a free quote today at petsinapickle.co.uk.
Discover Ireland's wild Atlantic way with Aer Lingus. Fly London to the west of Ireland from $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Enjoy breathtaking scenery, taste fresh seafood, and explore wild coastal walks. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
The Six Nations don't do things by halves. Turn to The Telegraph for unrivaled insight from legends of the game. Join Sir Ian McGeechan, Brian Moore, Will Greenwood and other rugby greats to follow every dramatic moment. Subscribe to our sport package today from just £1 per week at telegraph.co.uk.
I'm Peter Jones. Lifting business performance is critical in today's uncertain times. But how do you keep up with changing regulations and rising demands? How do you break free from manual processes to raise productivity? The answer is technology that elevates performance and comes with industry-leading support. Over 1 million UK businesses, including my investment group, trust Sage to manage their finances, operations and people.
Elevate your business today with our free performance review. Visit sage.com/perform.
Oh, hello there. My name's Worcester. Now, as a cat, I'm a bit of an expert when it comes to warmth. So imagine how cat-a-hoop I was to find out my humans had installed a new Worcester Bosch Green Star 8000 style boiler. Not only does it look perfect, it comes with a 12-year guarantee and is consistently rated excellent on Trustpilot. It really is the the cat's whiskers. To be as warm as Worcester, search worcesterbosch.co.uk.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with James O'Brien.
12:49 is the time. Are you? Well, you know you are, obviously, if you can hear me. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Sheila will be here at 1. Fascinating conversations about chicken, believe it or not, and strangely civilised as well. I think that's be the change that you want to see. However, overshadowing all of this is the return from holiday, or vacation as we will soon be legally required to call it after our trade deal with America. Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. You look almost suntanned. Have you been somewhere nice?
I've had a very nice holiday in the south of France. It was lovely. It's a really great getaway.
Metropolitan elite. Do you want to talk about Priti Patel?
Okay, yes, let's talk about Priti Patel on a short holiday. The Prime Minister has full confidence in his Home Secretary. That was the message from Boris Johnson's official spokesman this morning. But when the same question was asked in relation to Sir Philip Rutman, the most senior civil servant in the Home Office, the Prime Minister's spokesman would only say that Mr Johnson had full confidence in the civil service. In short, number 10 is subsiding, perhaps not unsurprisingly, with Priti Patel in this row. The origins of which are found in disagreements between Priti Patel and her most senior officials in the Home Office. These are non-political, taxpayer-funded employees charged with implementing the demands of ministers. In the Home Office, the most senior official is Sir Philip Rutman. Two major policies which are causing the friction, James. The first is the decision to deport 42 foreign nationals to Jamaica 2 weeks ago. You'll remember 25 of those 42 remained in the UK after the High Court upheld demands for an injunction because the Home Office couldn't guarantee they had access to legal advice because of intermittent mobile phone reception.
Well, if we were being timed, we would say because of the rule of law.
Yes, so you have to
that's
have,
what the row is about. The civil servant has suggested that Priti Patel doesn't care as much about the rule of law as she should, and he does.
Well, there was a civil servant who then worked through the night to try and overturn the injunction that the High Court had issued, which said because there was an intermittent mobile phone reception, those 25 who remained in the UK couldn't get the legal advice they needed to challenge the Home Office decision to deport them. They then had a fractious meeting with, apparently this is what the allegation is, with Priti Patel, where Priti Patel made the demand about why they had failed to deport those 25 nationals because of the injunction. Then they later collapsed, that Home Office official later collapsed.
I thought I was simplifying things by saying it's the rule of law.
Well, it was just...
Which it is.
Which it is. The injunction is the rule of law.
So the Prime
and why can't you change the law?
The Prime Minister, you think, is siding with the person that doesn't care as much as...
He's siding with the political
about
ally.
the rule of law.
Yes, he's siding with his political ally rather than with the Permanent Secretary and the staff of the Home Office.
As you say, I mean, he kind of has to, doesn't he? He appointed her.
Yeah. And of course, we're coming off the back of a reshuffle, so he can't really... He's in a position where he can't... This is not the greatest time to sack her, Priti Patel. There's no suggestion, of course, that he would do that, given his spokesman has just said that he has full confidence in Priti Patel. The second issue is on this points-based immigration system. It's got to be introduced by the end of the year, because that's when the transition period comes to an end. There's a very high bar now for those coming to the UK from EU countries who want to work. They need to earn at least £25,600. Many in jobs like hospitality, care sector, NHS don't pay any kind anywhere near that kind of money. Agriculture, they don't pay that money. And there's
I suppose on the plus side, there's not going to be any agriculture left soon, so the worker shortage won't be quite as serious as it will be.
So there's a deficit of around 8 million jobs that will be unfilled, potentially. That's what forecasts are saying. Priti Patel has argued that those roles can now be filled with economically inactive Brits. The argument from the Home Office civil servants is that there aren't 8 million British residents just sitting around waiting to work. They're students, elderly, sick, and they won't be able to make up that shortfall, hence the disagreement. And then off the back of this, we've had these hostile briefings over the weekend.
This is the one that intrigues me the most, actually. So MI5 reportedly don't trust her, and then today a counter briefing comes out also from, this is what's so confusing for the ordinary reader, security sources say MI5 don't trust Priti Patel, and then today security sources, presumably different ones, say yes they do, story is made up.
So the important distinction is that MI5, the security service, operates outside of the Home Office. It is not part of the Home Office. It is its own separate organisation. And the allegation, of course, that it doesn't trust Priti Patel with intelligence and therefore withholds that. And secondly, this allegation that the security officials are left to roll their eyes at her suggestions during meetings speaks to the fact, the insinuation to Israel. And the insinuation is from that.
Well, she sounds perfectly trustworthy.
The insinuation from that, James, is that because they don't trust her, she's not up to the job and therefore she needs to be moved from her position. Now there has been a joint statement from Sir Philip Rutman, but Sir Philip Rutman is in the Home Office. He runs the Home Office, and he's saying in that joint statement with Priti Patel that they're harmonious and they're able to work together.
And presumably in mitigation, she would point out that she has presided over immigration rules that would have prevented her own parents from moving to the United Kingdom, so come on guys, give me a break.
So, yes, under those...
What a lovely country we're becoming.
Because they were from under the other...
No, they weren't. They came before that.
They came before that?
Yeah, that's the whole point, There'd be an asylum case and they would fall under that, but they didn't. They came here and opened up their very successful chain of newsagents for, I suppose, what we'd have to describe as economic reasons. Theo Ashwood, thank you very much indeed. It's 12:55. Nice to have you back from your grand vacances. Mike's in Caerphilly in South Wales. Mike, what can I do you for?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, James. How are you?
Pretty good, Michael. What's on your mind?
Excellent. It's just you were saying earlier, about 10 minutes ago, about hogwash, and I'm thinking, well, maybe we should change that phrase, and maybe it should be chicken wash.
Is that really what you rang in to say? I'm a big fan of rubbish jokes, as, like all dads. But I don't know how much of my show I can dedicate to them in good conscience.
No, I think the chlorinated chicken we're getting from America, which will happen, I'm sure. What's to stop British manufacturers chlorinating their chicken once it starts arriving?
Nothing.
Like,
just scale, just the economies of scale.
Well, cut the Americans out, push them to one side. Do what the Japanese did with the motorbikes back in the 40s or 50s or 60s or whatever.
Yes. No, I don't think anyone's disputing that, except that, of course, people don't want to eat this chicken. Nobody wants to eat it. Even I haven't been able to get calls from bonkers Brexiters claiming that this is what they voted for at all. And I can normally get a call from a bonkers Brexiter on every subject under the sun, mate. But nobody is claiming that this is what they either wanted or voted for. So, although you're right, we could have our own homegrown British chlorinated chicken for British food poisoning victims. I don't know that is much of a silver lining in the great scheme of things.
Well, I've gone vegetarian now, so I won't use it anyway.
That is the other potential silver lining, although you'd have to take a very long run up and squint a bit to see it as such, is that this might encourage an uptick in vegetarianism and veganism. But that's highly unlikely to be on the horizon of the American agriculture and farming lobby seeking to bring their bad practices to Britain. Why? I don't think anyone knows anymore. Croatian blue passports manufactured in Poland by Franco-Dutch company? Yeah, nothing says sovereignty like that. Phil's in Loughborough with the last word. Make it a minute, Phil, if you would.
I'll try my best there, James. I was just going to say, with regards to America having high cases of food poisoning, in the UK we don't have as much. I had food poisoning pretty bad from chicken. That put me off work for a fortnight. I was literally in pain in A&E by Wednesday. The GP said she hadn't seen that particular type or isolate of salmonella since the 80s. That's how rare it is in the UK. Start importing the American stuff, and the amount of people that's going to be out of work doubled over, on the toilet, having a bad day.
Thank you, Philip. That's quite enough of that. Sheila Fogarty's in the room. I generally have an uptick in standards when Sheila arrives in the studio. But before you go, just to cheer you up, guess what a team of microbiologists at Southampton University discovered in 2018, Phil?
I'm ready, don't scare me.
All right, the bacilli such as Listeria and Salmonella remain completely active after chlorine washing. The process merely makes it impossible to culture them in the lab, giving the false impression that the chlorine washing has been effective.
Wow.
So what did you vote for? Blue passports, fish and Listeria. It's coming up to 12:59. Thank you, Phil. I'm glad you've recovered, and I'm grateful to you for keeping your description of your malady relatively civilised, but I am nevertheless going to apologise to Sheila Fogarty for bringing such vulgarity to your ladylike ears.
Well, we've all been there, haven't we? Let's face it. Ladylike ears or not.
It's a seagull's egg for me in Padstow. But I can only tell that story after the watershed.
Thanks, James. From 3 today, why are babies with Down syndrome allowed to be aborted long after babies without it? A campaign wants that changed. Should it be? 2, Tyson Fury has achieved extraordinary things in boxing and in life, recovering from addiction and other mental illness, to reclaim his life and global success in his sport. He's also said some extremely offensive things about women, gay people, and he says the devil is coming. Should the latter mean he gets no homecoming parade for the former? Straight up out of the news though, still with coronavirus, Italy has 2 major cities in lockdown because of it. With the virus worsening and travelling closer to home, are you taking any protective measures yourselves?
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From From Global's newsroom at 1 o'clock, a large crowd has gathered outside court as WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange starts his fight against his extradition to America. He's wanted in the US over leaking thousands of classified documents a decade ago. He says he was acting as a journalist and not a criminal. LBC's correspondent Rachel Venables is at Woolwich Crown Court.
Even inside the court, you can hear the faint chants of free Julian Assange over and over again from outside, where more than 100 of the publisher's supporters have turned up. Inside courtroom 2, meanwhile, the US government's lawyers are beginning to lay out their case against him. They say he's not a journalist, but guilty of ordinary criminality. Rachel Venables, LBC, Woolwich Crown Court.
There are growing fears of a serious outbreak of coronavirus in Europe as Italy struggles to contain the spread of the illness. 50,000 people in the country have been placed in quarantine. 5 people have died. More than 150 others have been infected. Residents have been urged to stay at home and special permissions needed to enter or leave certain areas. Camilla Pedala is a nurse in Milan.
They should have done checks at airports and taken into account all stopovers that have not been considered. We, in our small way, can implement safety and hygiene rules that should always be valid.
And the outbreak is impacting on the markets, which opened sharply down across Europe this morning. The fastest falling businesses were airlines, hit by worries that coronavirus may push down the appetite for global travel. More than 100,000 people have gathered in India for a rally in honour of Donald Trump. The US president is there as part of a state visit aimed at improving relations between the two countries, which have recently been strained by stalled trade talks. Police are investigating after a body was found in the back of a bin lorry in South London. Officers were called in the early hours of this morning to Camberwell. The Met say the death is being treated as unexplained. Primary school children in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland playing football will no longer be allowed to head the ball in training sessions. The 3 football associations have updated their guidance. The Scottish FA had been the first to look into it after a study found a link between the sport and dementia. The LBC Markets report a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was down 231 points at 71.72. The pound buys $1.28 and €1.19. LBC weather: snow across Northern Ireland and Northern England turning to rain and easing. Snow in Scotland becoming confined to northern and central parts. Brightening up elsewhere, a high of 12 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Holly Harris.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband Switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Publicly available out of contract, non-promotional pricing. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive 6 speeds above 35 megabits per second. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Sheila Fogarty.
Hello there, good afternoon to you if you are just joining us here at LBC. I'm just looking at footage from Italy, the stats on coronavirus from there. They have more than 150 cases. 5 people have died of the illness in the last few days. And Italy has locked down 2 of its major cities, Milan and Verona. And fears, as you heard in the news bulletin there, obviously growing that the outbreak could reach pandemic scale, i.e. just travelling freely around the world as more cases emerge around the globe. Most infections are still in China, but other nations like South Korea, Italy, Iran seem to be having increasing cases of the virus, which causes respiratory disease. COVID-19 is the name it's been given because coronavirus more generally is the name of a number of different varying viruses varying in the danger that they pose depending on who has them, because of course if you're in a vulnerable group, elderly or with an immunosuppressed condition of one form or another, you will be at greater risk. But there are still many things we don't know about this particular coronavirus. So fears of a pandemic are starting to increase, is the sense you get. 77,000 people in China where it began at the end of last year, have been infected, and nearly 2,600 people, there or thereabouts, in China have died. Over 1,000 cases have been confirmed in about 30 countries, and more than 20 deaths. Italy reported 2 more deaths today, as I said, raising the total there to 5. Now, it's important that we talk about coronavirus with our heads screwed on, isn't it? That we don't get ahead of ourselves and worse still, create anxiety in people who maybe suffer from anxiety. We don't want to increase that at all. So let's just focus on what we do know. We do know that at this point in its existence, or in its known existence, other viruses like SARS, like Ebola, have plateaued out at this point. And coronavirus, particularly with this news from Iran, from Italy and the like, seems to be gathering pace. And that's the reason for increased concern. Now, in Italy, as I said, they've locked down 2 major cities. I mean, we are not there, and hopefully we don't get to that point. But if we did, it would be a whole different story, really, wouldn't it, in terms of public health? We talked last week about vaccinating your children, and those of you who still insist on not vaccinating your children, still a huge uptake of vaccination, thankfully, but there are those who resist. I wonder what it would be like here in the UK if people just say, look, I've been diagnosed, but I'm going out, I'm going to the cinema, I'm refusing to allow a government to tell me what to do. We don't really know how that would work, and we're not an authoritarian country like China, so how might it work? And are you already taking measures? I was listening to James's programme this morning and heard one dad